Hi there, my name is Sidney Winston. Welcome to my channel. I think today we are going to embarrass Catholicism. How about we do that? And we'll do that through the ambassador of Catholicism, the only one that we know, the only one that I know, our friend Canadian Catholic. Just remember what the Catholics throughout history have been responsible for. Let's start off with the Crusades. Let's carry on with the Reconquista. How about the Nazi and Catholic collaboration on exterminating the Jews in Germany of the 1940s. Here in Canada, we just had a situation where they've a Catholic residential school here in my province they found over 200 dead baby bodies, children bodies, buried in the grounds of this Catholic school. Yeah. So when it comes to the Catholics, I don't think that you Catholics have got have got a right to utter one word in your defense. You've got nothing to defend yourself. Zero. Which brings me to our friend Canadian Catholic. I put together a short video, and in it he tries to philosophize his God into existence, tries to reify his God into existence, but he makes a major error at the end, and you'll see. So I don't see why we wouldn't want to just play the video. I think we'll get right into it. If I can find it. There we go. Okay. Now, this is about 6 minutes long, and I want you to listen to the stupid that Canadian Catholic comes up with.
How can you lack belief in something that you can't define? But my problem is that I was waiting for someone else to define what God they believed in, and then decided whether I lacked belief in it or not. I personally held to the idea that there was no coherent definition of God. So my issue then becomes that how can you lack belief in something that you can't define? You can lack belief in all the proposed religious versions of God and still not be an atheist. For example, pantheists have proposed things that they see as God, something like the universe. Essentially, from my perspective, to say you lack belief in God in general is to say that you have some workable definition at least. But the problem is that I at least did not have any definition. I was waiting for someone else to define it and then decide whether I'm convinced or not. I'm not saying that we have to believe what is given to us. That's what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is that you can be a non-religious agnostic without being an atheist. There are several pieces of, I would say, evidence, broadly speaking, that for me add up to point to Christianity with some degree of confidence, with acceptable degree of confidence. There are several categories. One of the categories I could bring is that there are some things which we could have predicted to have been in place had there been a transcendent mind. This is, I'm not saying this is strong
Nonsense.
evidence on its own, but when combined with others, this adds to the level of confidence. It's a combination of contingency and teleological arguments. A step from that is the evidence that this God, deistic or theistic, communicates with people. One most convincing thing is that all cultures across the planet have an innate religious desire to connect with this first cause, and they all have these ideas of a priest, of a shaman that communicates with this first cause. What I'm saying is not the stories they make up, but this innate evolutionary desire to connect with the transcendent mind, an event or an occurrence whose ultimate origin lies partially or fully outside of the universe as we experience it. Now, when you're asking for evidence, when you're telling me, show me the evidence, you are demanding the evidence that originates from the universe as we experience it. So you're very, when you ask me to show you the evidence, this very sentence in your mind precludes the possibility of me showing you anything supernatural. But my Catholicism is dependent on several important things. This determination happens whether this God intervenes or whether he does not intervene. Here's the thing. We accept that there is a reality where you've granted me now that there is this sovereign being, theistic God or whatever. Now the issue is, if there is this God and people, all cultures have had some view of that God, their own, maybe mythological view, then isn't it too much of a coincidence, and isn't the workable assumption, at least in this case, that this God has at least in some point intervened, and this is why they have this innate desire to represent this God, to talk about this God, to invent imagery of this God? That is the most natural conclusion. I see it from top down. I see from the top we start, and we have this theistic being, and then if we notice some things we would expect, this reinforces the confidence. So what would we expect if this theistic being had communicated with people? We would expect people to have some sort of desire to connect with him.
Right. So, I don't know if you caught that. Let me just play that last little bit there.
Innate desire to represent this God, to talk about this God, to invent imagery of this God. That is the most natural conclusion. I see it from top
now listen
down.
to this. Top down.
I see from the top we start, and we have this theistic being, and
so at the top we start, we have this theistic being, right? So we start with that conclusion. We start with the conclusion already.
then if we notice some things we would expect, this reinforces the confidence. So what would we expect if this theistic being had communicated with people? We would expect people to have some sort of desire to connect with him.
Right.
How
But
can
this being, this invisible, non-existent being, is not communicated with anybody. So essentially what Canadian Catholic is saying is that first they conceive of God, and then they accept God as the axiom of the times, and then they go looking for proof. That's essentially what the Catholics do. The Catholics are gormless, the Catholics are cowards, the Catholics they should be ashamed of themselves for what they have done to this planet over the last couple of thousand years. They've been complicit in genocide. What more of a black mark against your name can you possibly use? Why is anybody proud to be a Catholic of all fucking things? Ugh, it makes me sick. Now, I think I'm just gonna. I don't see anybody in the chat. Maybe I need to refresh my screen. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, I hope I don't mess things up. Let me just give me 1 moment here. Just give me 1 moment. It's possible that no one's writing in the chat. Possible. Ah, I see it now. Hey, Cryptomeria. Not Tristan. How you doing? Yeah, I'm really upset about the Catholic Church as a whole. They, instead of cowering and hiding and apologizing and groveling, they still think of themselves as being better than everyone. It's disgusting. Okay, now I have a Google Meet room open, and I'll give you the link in a minute. But what I wanted to carry on, what I want to do is let me go there. Okay, so over here there was a guy. Let me bring him in. So this dude here, Honest Atheist, he appeared a few months ago, towards the beginning of the year, and he started his show. He was, he started fresh. Nobody else, he'd never been on before. And he had a really good show going, and he had, I don't know, maybe half a dozen, 8 or so, 10 segments, 10 broadcasts, 10 shows, and then he disappeared. I don't know why, but what I do want to bring to you is his first caller ever that called into his live show. I don't know if you've seen this, but I thought I'd share it with you. So this can be a treat.
Awesome, man. You are the first caller on Honest Atheist Live. How do you feel about that?
Great.
Yeah, man. Thanks for tuning in, man. What did you want to talk about today? No
Well, I
worries.
talk with atheists every day and for years, asking them to explain the coherency
Guess
of
who?
their atheism. And you said you're an honest atheist. Well, all the
Absolutely.
atheists that I deal with are dishonest. So you must be the first honest atheist then. So can you tell me how it is that God doesn't exist?
Sure. So I'd firstly just say, look, I wouldn't say I'm the first honest atheist, but I would say that atheists have the
Oh, I'm not
tendency.
hearing you. Hold on.
You're not hearing me?
Okay,
Come
it
on,
should
Gary,
work now.
get together.
Sure. So firstly, I'd say that before we get to your question there, I would say that atheists have the tendency to be rather arrogant, and but I wouldn't say that they're particularly dishonest. However, they can be particularly harsh in the way that they deal with people,
Oh.
and in the way
Well,
that they
the
have
atheists that I deal with are
conversations.
dishonest. So could you tell me how is it that there's no God?
Well, see, I don't know whether they're. What was your name, by the way?
Darth Dawkins.
Darth Dawkins. All right. So I wouldn't say that I know whether there is not a God, but I wouldn't say that I know whether there is a God. I
Do
just
you believe? Yeah. Do you believe that what is fundamental to reality?
There's the mistake people make with Gary. Don't say you can say there is or there isn't a God. I've been harping on you now for how many years? There is no God. Take your stand and stick to it.
Reality is a mind God.
do I believe that what is fundamental to reality is a mind God.
Yeah, is a mind, and we call that God. You believe what is fundamental and ultimate is a mind that is the source of all possibility and impossibility. Do you positively believe that?
I would absolutely disagree with that. Do you believe that?
Okay, so yes, I do. Now,
So
your position is, hold on.
Okay, so it's this guy's show. It's Honest Atheist show, and already Gary is starting to bully and take over.
The reason why I asked the question is so we can get clarity on what your atheism constitutes.
I would say I subscribe to a scientific worldview. So how would you prove that?
No, hold on a second.
I'll hold on for the sake of
you positively believe there's no God, right?
No, I don't. Okay. If we want to frame it that way, I mean, this gets into
Just
Well,
go
I'm
for
being
it.
very precise because I've dealt with literally hundreds, if not thousands, of atheists. Okay?
Sure thing.
So all I have to do is ask you the question: do you believe that it is not necessary to reference God as the precondition of all facts?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point in referencing God as the precondition for the fact that Gary Milne, as a Christian, walked out on his Christian marriage and went to another stranger's bed. That's a fact. How's that reference God? I've said this before, Gary. You're in a heap of trouble here.
Okay, so
I do not believe
okay,
that.
so you believe that it is not necessary to reference the necessity of God as the precondition. Now, that belief
it is not
logically.
necessary.
Yeah, I didn't hear your last sentence.
It's not necessary, and yes, it's logically consistent.
Well, I didn't finish my statement. Okay.
Sure.
That logically necessitates that God cannot coexist if that belief is true. So what you have affirmed logically entails the denial of God, whether you realize it or not.
No.
Okay.
No, that is absolutely.
All right, I'll explain it to you.
And
okay?
let me explain. Okay. Let me just first explain to you why I feel that's logically inconsistent, and you're taking things out of my yes or no answer, and assuming things about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm that doesn't necessarily imply that I'm rejecting a God, because
I didn't say imply.
Well, explain that to me again, because
do you know what logical entailment means?
But you're engaging in a circular argument already.
In philosophy, I'm trying to explain something to you.
Yeah, but you're assuming that there already is a God.
I'm not assuming that. Okay, listen, you're not
assuming that there's a God, Gary. You're bullshitting. You're a fucking liar. You're almost as bad as the Catholics. In fact, you're just as bad as the Catholics.
You're going too fast. Listen. Okay.
I'll listen to you. Yeah.
If P, listen.
If P, then Q.
Modus ponens. Okay. If P, therefore Q. If you assert P, then Q is logically and is necessarily entailed. Do you understand?
Listen to this
if
crap.
P, then Q.
Sure.
If somebody then asserts P,
that's the fifth time
Q is logically entailed.
Yeah, but just because you assert P doesn't mean that P exists.
All right.
Exactly.
Listen. I'm trying. Listen.
Dude.
You're being argumentative with me. I'm trying to explain something.
You're being argumentative with me.
You keep on over talking.
You keep on over talking. Listen to him. There he goes with his spiel.
Okay, I'm trying to explain something to you, right?
I'll let you explain. But you must also allow me to point out the flaw in your logic.
Yes.
I'm not. You won't be able to. What I have said so far.
Okay, let's go for it. Let's go.
Okay. If you say, I do not believe that it is necessary to reference God as the precondition of all facts, what you are saying then is that fact under consideration, right, exists independently from God.
So, Gary, when you decided that you didn't want to sleep with your wife anymore and you wanted to go and try other things, was that God inspired? Because that's a fact. And did you reference God when you made that decision? Did you reference God when you lost your fucking temper at your family, when you abused them? Did you actually reference God there? Or are you a two-faced liar?
Okay? That fact does not necessitate referencing God as the precondition. So the fact in view, whatever that fact is, exists independently of God as the ultimate precondition. So are we clear so far?
What you're saying is, if I don't see the necessity to reference God as the precondition for everything,
right? I asked you a question.
Yeah,
You're not focusing on my question.
I'm clarifying the question.
No,
that's what I'm trying to do.
It doesn't need clarification. I'm trying to explain something to you. Okay.
And what I'm doing.
See, he's totally trying to take over. What a piece of human garbage.
Is I'm repeating
Yeah,
back to you.
listen, dude, I've had this
Dude, I knew that dude would come in there at some point.
conversation literally hundreds.
I've had this conversation hundreds of thousands of times.
Yes.
Listen, you can laugh all you want. I've had this conversation literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. I'll go over it again with you, all right? Now, I understand why you're objecting. This is a very common reaction.
This guy, Gary, is a condescending little cunt. Either way you look at it. Everybody has to agree with me, right?
Now, there are only, in a world where God exists, conceptually speaking, all facts would necessitate referencing God.
Correct. The fact that you brought home a sexually transmitted disease to your wife has to reference God. Now, how does it? I want you to come clean, Gary. Tell us, how does your STD reference God?
In a world where God does not exist, all facts would not necessitate referencing God. So when you assert that you believe that facts do not necessitate referencing God, that logically entails, from your point of view, that the fact under consideration exists metaphysically and ontologically independent of God. Okay, so is it clear so far?
It is, and I accept that. Yeah.
Okay, now, if a fact is stipulated to be actual and intelligible without the necessity and reference to God,
Yes.
then the falsity of God is logically entailed.
No, it's not.
Okay, you're not understanding this.
Yes, I
Okay.
am. I am. I
He
absolutely.
does that.
No, you.
He does that all the time. You're not understanding. And then, as honest atheist says, yes, I do. And now he's going to raise his voice, Gary, and tell him how he's not understanding.
No, you are not.
So
I'm not
then-
trying to be
then
rude. I'm not trying.
I am
Listen,
absolutely
you are not.
understanding it
No, you are
100%.
not. I will explain it to you.
Coherently and cogently, I understand it. So
No, you are absolutely. You are not understanding. Okay.
100%.
No, you absolutely listen to. No, you are not. I'm going to explain it to you. You simply do not understand.
Then explain it.
Now,
I feel like you already have.
I'll explain it again. All right. Now, your reaction is extremely commonplace because people haven't thought from this perspective.
Okay,
The
I'll try
question
and
I'm
think from
asking
your
you.
perspective here.
The question I'm asking you is from a transcendental perspective,
Yes.
which
okay.
most people do not commonly reason from. Now, if I say
Transcendental perspective, which most people do not commonly reason from. This is what he just said. Gobbledygook, word salad, incoherent shice.
to you that from my position, if I were to say to you that I believe that a fact in consideration necessitates referencing God as the precondition, then it logically and necessarily follows from that God is entailed from that fact. Okay, I'm not asserting the existence of God from what I believe. I'm talking about the logical entailment. If P, therefore Q. Okay, so if a fact exists independently of God, then God cannot logically coexist in that world. Okay, let me repeat that.
Okay.
If any fact
Yeah, I get it.
exists independently of God, then God cannot logically coexist. Do you know what I mean by logically coexist?
Yes.
Okay.
Such a
Now, it's not the assertion that God does not exist. It means if any fact in consideration exists independently of God, then God conceptually cannot logically coexist in the same world where that fact exists independently of God. And
Right.
the reason why.
Right. So, Gary, let's get back to your dilly-dallying, Gary. You're a Christian. You scream and shout at people who don't follow the Christian fairy tale view of the world. You yell and you scream and shout. And you threaten how many people are going to hell. Well, I got news for you, Gary. According to your standards, you, sir, are going to hell too. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Gary. I'll see you in hell, because it seems I'm going there too. Ha 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 ha. finally we'll meet face to face when we get to
Why?
hell.
Is that God is defined conceptually as the precondition of all facts. So if there's one fact that exists independently of God, and that is affirmed to be true.
Okay, one fact that exists independently of God is that you live in your basement in your mother's house. How's God involved in that at all? Nothing. Not involved. You are living in your mother's house, you're 60 years old, you don't have a job, but you feel entitled to sit on the internet for 12 hours a day and yell and scream and bully people around at your whim. Well, I think your days are numbered, Gary. Numbered.
The fact exists independently of God, then God cannot logically coexist in that world.
Okay, so God cannot coexist in the world where I believe that facts can be stated and independently exist without God.
Right. So that means when one affirms that it is not necessary to reference God as the precondition of all facts, that logically commits you to the position of the falsity of God.
No, okay. For argument's sake,
listen.
No. You listen.
Listen carefully.
No, you listen.
Logically and necessarily is entailed. It is inescapable. Now, when I say that,
hold on a second.
I am not saying. Listen to me. I am not asserting at the moment whether or not God exists. Okay, what we're talking about is the logical entailment. If P, therefore Q. Okay.
Yes, but
so we're going to fill in the values here. Okay. P represents.
I get it. Yeah, I get the question.
P represents a fact that exists.
Sorry to mute you just for a second. There's thoughts I'm missing here because I want to just clarify them for a second because your argument entails referencing God. And your argument is only valid because you're the one posing the questions. But God doesn't necessarily have to exist in the question, and if God didn't exist in the question, then your argument falls flat. Your argument is ultimately circular because we don't actually need to reference God. And in you asking me the question, does God necessarily have to exist? And I say no, for something to be factual, then you're saying, well, I'm acknowledging that there is a God. I'm not acknowledging that there is a God. And I'm not acknowledging any kind of metaphysical space for there to be a God. Does that make sense? It's because of the way you're phrasing the question.
Exactly.
You're arguing for the fact that I'm simply denying that there is a God in my answer. And I think what you're going to say is, I don't understand the question, which I do. Go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, did you turn me down?
Well, yeah, because I was trying to respond.
Okay, you're not understanding. Listen to me. The whole time I've been saying your microphone has been muffled. Your sound quality is terrible.
Okay, well, that's something I need to.
Okay, now listen to me.
Listen.
I am not trying to pull the wool over your eyes.
I think you are.
I'm trying to explain to you. Okay, James, will you listen? James, do you want to be argumentative or do you want to learn something today?
I'm always open to learning something, but do you?
No, you're not.
Yes,
you are absolutely not.
You are not.
I will go over this again with you.
You are not open to having a conversation.
The first meeting. This is the first time they met.
I am. James, listen to me. I'm going to leave, okay? Because you're just being argumentative. I'm trying to explain something to you.
I'm not being argumentative.
This is okay, James. James, do you know what modus ponens is?
Modus ponens?
Yeah.
No, I haven't heard.
Modus ponens is a basic rule in logic. Okay. There are certain. Okay. Do you know what the laws of logic are, James?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Now there are also certain inference rules in logic. Okay. There are also in logic where we can have an argument or a syllogism where the conclusion can be valid but not sound. Okay? Now,
Sure thing.
what I'm trying to explain to you, I am not addressing, James, I'm trying to explain something to you that you're not familiar with.
I understand.
Okay?
No, listen to me for a second. I'm only happy to continue the conversation if you're actually going to allow me to respond.
It's his
I'm
show.
trying to explain something to you.
Yes,
okay?
but you're not
It's
necessarily...
this-
It's this guy's show, and he's asking for permission to respond. Jesus fucking Christ.
But the whole time,
about
listen,
modus ponens. You cannot
Jay,
implement modus
Okay.
ponens. P implies Q, P is true. You're gone.
you're not understanding it. Do you think I'm arguing for the existence?
You know where I think Gary Milne is stupid when it comes to this modus ponens? Because he says if P, then Q, right? But if P itself is an axiom to which there's no argument, it's accepted, then there's no such thing as if P, then Q. It should be P, then Q. But Gary, because he doesn't understand modus ponens himself, he pipes up with if P, then Q. He's a dumbass.
Of God.
Well, what are you actually arguing for? Yes, you are arguing for this.
I asked you. No, I haven't even made an argument for God, James. You're not
That's because there is no argument for God. Fuckface.
understanding. I'm talking about your position.
Yes.
I'm doing an analysis of your position.
You're doing
Did you think that I was making an argument for God?
You know what you're arguing for, if you'll let me explain. You're arguing that in my denial of there needing to be a reference for God, I am therefore assuming that denial.
No, that's not my position.
Yes, it is your position.
No, it's not.
That is
I'm trying to
clearly
see,
what
James. You are very. Listen, I'm going to leave in a minute because you are
You can
very
leave if you would like
confused
to.
about what I'm saying.
I'm
Okay?
not
You're very
confused at all.
about what I'm saying. You see, you keep on over talking me. Right? No, really, this is really. If this is your first stream or your first caller,
Oh,
you're
there
not
we go.
conducting. You're not conducting yourself as an adult.
Yes, I am. I'm actually trying to have a
No,
discussion.
you're not. I'm
So-
trying to explain something to you. Okay.
Then go for it. I'll let you speak if you let me
Okay.
respond.
I'm trying to explain. You see, you will not stop over
Are
talking.
you fucking serious, man?
Okay. I am dead serious that you keep on over talking me.
Man, you've talked this entire time, and every time I try to
That-
respond to you, you say I'm
Okay.
over talking
James,
you.
have I given you? Listen, James. If there is a fact that exists independently of God, okay, do you believe that there is at least one fact that exists independently of God?
Yes, I think there is. The one fact, well, there's tons of facts, but I can think of one fact that exists independently of God. And that is that Christian Gary Milne, cheated on his wife. Christian Gary Milne then abused his family. Christian Gary Milne then had his family divorce him. And then Christian Gary Milne comes here online and starts to moralize and preach and preach from his Christian pedestal. Why? Oh, why, people? Why do you buy this bullshit from him? You should be able to see right through him. He's fake. He's a hoax. He's a scammer. He's a grifter.
Absolutely. The water I'm drinking, as an example
Okay.
of that,
Okay.
the water I'm
Okay.
drinking right now feels and tastes like water, and is
Okay.
in fact
All right,
water.
James, listen to me.
I'm listening.
I've been doing this for 10 years.
Me too.
Okay.
10 years.
Now, okay.
How many atheists have you created in 10 years? Gary, I'll bet most of the atheists on this planet are new because of you. Thank you.
How old are you, James?
I'm 30
There he goes. How old are you? I'm old enough to be a father.
years old. How old are you, Darth
Okay, I'm almost 60.
Wow, you sound a lot younger. So that sounds.
Now, I'm trying. Listen to me.
All right,
This
go
is
for it. You
your
explain your position. I'm
misconception.
gonna let you. I'm gonna let you.
Your misconception is extremely common. I'm trying to explain to you.
His audio sucks, doesn't it, Gary? He's got to do something about it. Oh, he can't. He lives in a basement.
Something that you truly do not understand. I am at this moment not arguing for the existence of God. I'm simply explaining to you a logical entailment in what you affirm. Okay, I'm gonna unpack it for you.
Oh my God, you've already unpacked it, but I'll let you do it one more
Yeah.
time.
James, can God coexist with a world where one or more facts are independent of God?
Possibly, if God does in fact exist.
No, that's logically incoherent. I'm going to explain to you why. Okay, God is defined conceptually speaking. I'm not asserting that God exists. I'm saying the definition.
You can define God any way you like. If it's just a concept, that's your definition, Gary. But there could be 100 people with a definition of God, and you get 100 definitions of God.
Of God is that God is the precondition of all facts, definitionally. Okay, do you understand that so far?
Yes. Can I respond to that?
All right.
Are you being a...
Now,
No.
I want to finish.
I need some clarification on that
Okay,
point.
If God is the precondition of all facts, then how did your adultery come about? How did God help you in your adulterous behavior towards your wife and family? How was God a part of your abusive behavior towards your family? If God is there in all facts, then every time you've been a bad boy, Gary, your God is there. And you don't seem to acknowledge that for some reason. When you behave badly, your God all of a sudden doesn't exist. You're a bit of a hypocrite, Gary.
James, I'm gonna leave in a second. I'm trying to explain something to you. All right, James, you're 30 years old. You are not acting like a 30-year-old man.
Wow, you're scolding
there he
me on how
goes.
to behave as an adult.
Yeah, no, I am scolding you. Do you know why? It's
said
because
you're
I run
scolding-
into this misconception
Scolding
every
me.
single day.
No. You're saying you're not making...
James, okay, here's the question.
I'm gonna
God
let you talk because
coexist
it's
in
so,
a
it's just
world-
so entertaining.
James, I'm not going to stop, okay? Because I'm trying to explain something to you.
Sure.
You are not even willing to listen.
I have listened
Okay.
this entire time.
Now,
willing
can
to
God? Okay, James. I debate every single day on Discord. I've been doing this for years.
Yeah,
I deal with
10
hundreds and
years,
hundreds of people every single week. Okay.
Sure.
On a scale, you are on the upper end of people that I encounter that are being argumentative. I understand we're going to disagree metaphysically, but what I'm explaining to you right now is what is called a metaphysical entailment. Okay?
Sure, go
I
for
am
it.
not arguing for the existence of God.
As
okay?
long
Now,
as you don't, as long
if
as
we
you don't
assert,
assume.
okay, James,
Gonna mute you for a sec.
either a fact. James, either a fact, any fact at all.
Have you noticed that James has not had control of his room since he answered the phone?
Okay, will stand in causal relations to God, or it will not. That is a true dichotomy. Do you understand that?
Only if God exists. Yeah.
James, okay, we're
So-
not talking
no.
about...
You're not getting the answers you want. So every time I give you an answer, no, James, we're not talking about this.
Exactly.
You're not responding. You're not allowing me to talk. You're speaking over me. You're acting immature. You're not acting like an adult. Man, this platform is for a conversation.
Nice.
And I just fucking dropped your ass from this fucking chat,
Well
man, because
done.
you are useless at having a conversation, man. So, terrible, man. Terrible argument.
Yes.
And, yeah, disappointed. Disappointed that we couldn't have an honest conversation about that. So, you posed the question, can God exist? Can a fact exist without reference to God? That's essentially your argument. The first answer I gave to that was yes, that can be true, and that's actually certainly what I believe. Okay? Yes, a fact exists without the possibility from God. Secondly, Darth Dawkins. The second answer that I gave to that question was possibly, or maybe a fact can exist in reference to God. But you're saying you're not making an argument for God, and any answer I gave you, you were unhappy with.
Mm-hmm.
So what you were looking for a certain course of answers. And
Exactly.
then what you did was, especially with my first answer, yes, a fact can exist independently of acknowledging God. What you then went on to do was to say, well, you're assuming in your denial of God a reference to God, and then you're saying that is illogical. Man, honestly, your question only... I actually only think that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Because I'm only denying the existence of God, and I think here what you're assuming is a denial of a God that actually exists. I don't believe that God exists because I haven't seen enough substantial evidence for that particular claim. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for having a conversation. I found that very interesting. And man, I found your arrogance overwhelming, actually. Very overwhelming. But thanks for calling in. Jesus Christ. Fuck.
Just wait. There's more. This doesn't end. This doesn't end here.
What a turmoil of a call. And I can see ongoing in this show just how rude I'm gonna have to become, because I'm basically just gonna have to mute guys like that and they can hear my point. And that guy would not let me respond. He just would not let me respond. He just wanted to talk. He just wanted to claim that.
Just remember that this is the first time this guy has bumped into Gary Mill. Very, very, very first time. Never knew who he was before.
He was king of arguing, and the king of logic, which he's not. Absolutely not the king of logic.
No, he's not.
And in reference to modus ponens, it says in propositional logic, modus ponens, also known as modus ponendo ponens, or implication elimination, or affirmation antecedent, is a deductive argument form and a rule of inference. So he's trying to say that I infer God by denying God, but I'm only inferring God by his particular question, and I'm not sure his particular question was particularly logical. I would say that his question, in fact, denies modus ponens.
Mm-hmm.
It denies the rule of logic itself.
Indeed.
I don't know. What do you guys think in the comments?
We think we want some more. There we go.
Maybe into the channel. Welcome back, Darth Dawkins.
I'll try this again. Are we still live?
We're still live, my friend. Welcome back.
Okay, so I hope you don't try to play to the audience. Okay.
I'm not trying to play.
We'll go over this again.
Let's go for it again.
Well, I've done this enough times that I know when somebody's playing to an audience.
Okay. But please, just before you start, would you allow me to say something to you?
Sure.
You cannot assume, or you cannot simply reject an answer I give because you're unhappy with it.
I didn't reject it because I'm unhappy with it. I'm rejecting it because it's not coherent.
Go for it. You go for it, man. I'm gonna sit back and
now.
Give you the
Okay. In this conversation, God is defined as the creator, the source of all facts. Okay, as a definition.
In your definition.
Okay.
I still don't know what this means. God is defined as the source of all facts. It's a fact that Gary Mill is an abusive adulterer. If God is the source of that fact, then that makes God a right cunt, doesn't it? Huh?
You're not. You see, yeah. You're still not getting this. Okay, we're not asserting that God exists. We're giving a definition of God. God is defined as what is fundamental, ultimate, eternal, the creator and the source of all temporal facts. Okay,
Sure.
you understand the definition? It doesn't mean that you have to accept that God is actual.
Okay.
Now, if God is defined as the precondition of all facts, right?
Yeah.
And there is a there is a fact, right? Either the fact will be categorized as necessitating referencing God, or the fact will be designated as not necessitating referencing God as the precondition.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Sure.
It's a true dichotomy, right? So either one will affirm that it is not necessary to reference God as the precondition of facts, or they will affirm it is necessary to reference God as the precondition of all facts. So what we have here is a true dichotomy. There's no neutrality. You understand that so far?
Sure. I'm listening.
Okay. So if we assert that a fact necessitates referencing God, then God would, by necessity, logically coexist with that fact. If the fact is stated as to not necessitate referencing God, then the logical entailment is that God cannot logically coexist in that world with that fact.
Stupid, stupid, stupid. Did I say that was stupid? Because what I really meant to say was that it was stupid. Let's take the fact of Darth making the decision to leave his marital house, her marital bedroom, and go and cohabit with somebody else of the same gender, because Darth is a little curious. Gary's a little curious, and he's got a beautiful wife, beautiful family, and he's God-fearing, he's a Christian, but that doesn't matter. The fact is that he wants to go and mess around outside of his marriage as a Christian. If God is the precondition for all facts, then God is the precondition for the fact that Gary Milne, a Christian, went with the blessing of God, because he's the precondition for this fact, went with the blessing of God to commit adultery in his marriage. This is the way he's thinking. He's actually emphasizing that it makes no difference whether God exists or God doesn't exist in terms of dealing with the real world.
These are logical entailments from definitions.
Okay.
Now, if one affirms it is not necessary to reference God for one or more facts, that affirmation logically entails the falsity of God. If somebody says that the fact in question necessitates referencing God, then that affirmation logically entails that God would exist in that world.
Right. Okay. So we've got an affirmation. We've got a fact. Gary Milne commits adultery on his wife. That's a fact. What difference does it make whether it's a fact that is tied to God, or it's a fact that is just tied to Gary Milne? Gary Milne, your argument for God is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. and you're looking more and more like a clown.
Okay?
Right.
We're not talking about proving the existence or the non-existence of God. We're just talking about what is the logical entailment from the fact that is affirmed. So do you understand so far?
No.
I do.
How do you understand that?
Okay, so if one affirms it's not necessary to reference God as the precondition of all facts,
Right.
which atheists do, right? Then there is a
Right.
logical...
I don't affirm God as a precondition of the fact that Gary Mill committed adultery on his wife. And find the flaw in that, Gary, please.
entailment that God cannot logically coexist in that world if that fact is true.
Right.
Okay. So when an atheist says it is not necessary to reference God as the precondition of all facts, that affirmation entails either the direct or the indirect denial of God. Now, the converse would also be true. If somebody affirms that one or more facts necessitate referencing God, then that position will entail either explicitly or implicitly that God logically coexists in that world.
Okay, so now we've got a situation where Gary Mill commits adultery on his wife, and God is involved in this, logically somehow involved in this. This must imply that Gary Mill was motivated by encouragement from his God in order to commit this adultery, in order for him to not feel like he is violating any of the moral laws that his God lays down, and that he, Mr. Syncopation, is bad in church, and syncopated music is what did Gary say? Syncopated music was invented to the rhythm of couples having sex in the back seat of a car back in the 40s and 50s. This is according to Gary. No. Genius.
Sure.
Okay? So all we're talking about is the logical entailment, not whether or not God exists.
So you're saying it works in reverse as well?
Yes.
Okay. And what does this point us toward?
So the issue is, what is the nature of atheism? In the last generation, atheists have shifted in large numbers from asserting that God did not exist.
Okay, now he's talking for atheists. See, he's a know-it-all. He thinks he knows everything about everything. Now he's going to say that in the last decade, there's been a shift in atheists. Listen, I've been an atheist with exactly the same position for five, 6 of my life now. So what's he talking bullshit for in this last decade? You know what? More than anything else, Darth Dawkins, as a narcissist, of course, is absolutely 100% full of himself, to the point where he's like a goldfish in a bowl that can't see through the bowl. Yet everybody can see him, and what a dumb-looking goldfish he really is.
To trying to redefine atheism as a autobiographical statement, whereupon atheism is simply a state of mind where they lack belief. Okay? Now,
it's not like
that way you
can
can insulate yourself from...
Can I just clarify that?
What's that? Sure.
So, I actually mentioned this at the start of the show. Atheists, you're right. You're right about that. Atheists have shifted their definition of atheism.
From what to
the
what?
New atheist movement.
So that's 2 against 1. I'm the one.
They've changed it from I don't believe in God, or I have a lack of belief in God, to I simply reject the assertion or the assertion or the evidence for God. That's
That's
fine.
the same thing. You just made a mistake.
No, 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 no. I haven't made a mistake. I'm
No,
trying to
you just
explain
did.
to you.
Lacking belief.
Oh,
Lacking
Jesus
belief
Christ.
equals a,
It's
a
just it's semantics.
rejection as well. It's the same thing.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it is. A rejection is a non-acceptance.
Yes, but lacking belief is not a non-acceptance.
Okay, again, to be fair, I will side with Gary Milne on this one, because it is either God or either reality. Either eternal God or either eternal reality, if you will. Obviously, eternal reality is the simpler explanation. It doesn't entail complications like these Christians introduce of a transcendental mind that existed before existence. Those kind of arguments, they go nowhere simply because the people who make those arguments, like Gary here, has no basis to know what he's talking about. None. He's no more intelligent than you and I, and we have no basis to know what he's talking about, to even experience the dimension or whatever the hell he's referring to with his God talk. I think that over the years, because it doesn't change, Gary's argument has washed away and become weaker and weaker and weaker to all those who have listened to the same droning argument year after year after year. Gary Milne, you're atrophying. You're fading away like a has-been Hollywood star. Bye-bye.
No, lacking belief is an ambiguity. Okay? When somebody says I lack belief in God, it doesn't inform us as to whether the lack of belief is the result of the denial or the lack of belief is due to a state of ignorance.
Yeah, and that's exactly my point.
Therefore, to say that you lack belief in God is an ambiguity.
I completely understand that. I'm saying that the new atheist movement has actually shifted the goalposts a little bit about how they define what atheism is.
New
No,
atheist.
no, that's incorrect. They haven't shifted a little bit. They've co-opted the conceptual frame of reference of agnosticism while trying to retain the historical title of atheism.
That's absolutely correct, and I agree.
Okay, now, so do you affirm or deny the existence of God?
How many times has Gary actually asked that question? Do you affirm or deny the existence of God? I'm telling you, everybody, when Gary asks you that question, say, God does not exist. Say, God is impossible. Say, God is irrational. Say, existence is infinite. Say something that is definite. Don't say, well, I don't know everything, so it's possible that there's an impossible God. Don't fall into the trap. Please.
See, I would take what we were just discussing. I would take more of an agnostic view, whereas I don't know if God exists because I haven't seen sufficient evidence for the existence of God.
Okay, yeah. All right. So this is the typical response.
Yes, that's right. That is the typical response. You're 100%.
All I have to do. Okay.
It's going to be simple for you then.
Okay, listen.
Listen.
Do you think that metaphysically one can be neutral about the existence of God?
Metaphysically be neutral about the existence of God. That is a bullshit question, because a metaphysical does not have any coherency to it. What does it mean? Give me an example of metaphysical as opposed to just matter or just physical or something. What the fuck does metaphysical actually mean? I submit that it means absolutely nothing.
I think that one can be neutral about the existence of God if they haven't gone through the process of thinking as to whether God exists. So they could
Right. That means. Hold on a second. What did he call him? I forget. Okay. So somebody can be neutral regarding the existence of God until they get to the point where they make that final decision. So it's a transitory thing. Why are we talking about that? We need to be talking about your final decision, not your transition. Nobody gives a shit about your journey. Let's get to the nuts and bolts of it all. Oops. Sorry.
Okay.
I would say that they can remain agnostic on the.
Yeah, this is the problem. Okay, let me explain to you why this is incorrect. All right.
No, I'm not saying it's incorrect. I'm saying that they could.
I'm trying to explain to you why this.
Who's fairly neutral, saying, "Well, God could or couldn't exist." I'm not sure.
Listen, I understand. Listen, how many atheists do you think I've talked with over the last 10 years?
Oh! Ask me! Hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands.
If a couple of thousand. Now, what you are telling me, you're not telling me anything new that I haven't heard for 10 years.
Cool, man.
Okay? Now, your reaction is typical of many atheists.
Right?
Because they're
Many atheists. Why? Hold on a second. This guy has been stewing in his mother's basement for 10 years now. Gary, this is not normal. You're a grown man, at least on the outside. Perhaps on the inside, you have not grown up enough to leave your mother's house. Maybe we should have a separate hangout discussion about that.
they're not accustomed to doing a transcendental perspective on the issue. Now, what does that mean? Transcendental means is we look at God and we say that God is defined, not asserted to exist, but God is defined as the precondition of all facts, as opposed to the idea.
Right. So God is defined as the precondition for the fact that Gary Milne committed adultery on his wife. God is defined as the precondition for the fact that Gary Milne abused his family. God is defined as the precondition for the fact that Gary Milne's ex-wife and children have turned away from him, have pretty much said, fuck off, we don't need you, you're an idiot. God is defined as the precondition for the fact that Gary Milne failed in his marriage. God is defined as the precondition for the fact that Gary Milne failed as a father. God is defined as the precondition of the fact that Gary failed as a provider. And God is defined as the precondition for the fact that for the last 10 years, Gary Milne has been living in his mother's basement. Yeah.
That God would be some kind of powerful, unembodied mind encapsulated within reality along with everything else. These are two different foreign conceptions of God.
Yeah,
But
atheism,
atheism,
one thing I'm wondering is
now,
what are you actually trying? What point are you actually trying to make?
well, first of all, I'm trying to explain to you, and I try to do this with all the atheists that I've been dealing with for years, is that the popular idea that you can maintain or profess neutrality toward God, although people think that it's viable. It is not, because all I have to do is ask, do you believe that it is not necessary to reference God as the precondition of all facts? And if one affirms it is not necessary to reference God, then there's a logical entailment that follows from that affirmation, whether or not the person making the affirmation is cognizant of the logical entailment. Okay?
Okay. Hands up if you understood what he said, because I didn't. And if you did, please keep it to yourself under the ship.
I'm sure you're familiar with logical fallacies.
Yes, I am, and I understand what you're saying.
Okay. Now,
I
people
understand your
commit
point.
people commit informal fallacies all the time, and they're unaware of it. And it's sometimes very difficult to explain to somebody. And then over time, sometimes these people get it. Now,
Sure. Hold on just a sec. Do you think you're committing a logical fallacy here in your question?
all the question is, do you believe that it is not necessary to reference God as the precondition? It's a question.
Yeah, but your question's a bit of a cop-out because you keep saying, well, I'm actually not even arguing that God exists. However,
there's nothing incoherent. Listen,
yeah,
there's nothing incoherent.
Listen to me. This is what I mean. You're not allowing me to actually speak. Are you actually gone? Yes, you're gone.
No, I'm here.
Okay. You are saying, okay, here is the definition for God, but then you're saying, but I'm not saying that God exists. I'm not arguing for proof that there is a God, and I'm not saying that you're saying you're not making cases for God, but you're giving a definition towards God, and to me that seems very illogical. And then you're framing a question in
James.
You're framing the question
James, all due respect to
denying.
you, James, listen to me. I don't mean any disrespect to you.
I don't mean any.
No, he doesn't mean any disrespect to you, James. None whatsoever. You can trust his word. He's a Christian.
You truly do. You truly listen.
I truly do not understand because
you truly do not
cannot
understand the
see-
conversation.
I do 100% understand that.
No, you, James, listen to me.
You do not
James,
see that your
I'm
logic
double.
is
You listen
incoherent.
to me, James. I'm double. Listen to me. I have
hold
talked
back.
with thousands of people. Listen.
I have talked to thousands of people. I'm double your age. I could be your father. James.
Listen to me carefully. I'm giving you a piece of advice, okay?
Yeah, you're assuming
Right?
God exists without saying
I'm
it.
double you. I'm not James.
I don't want
James,
your
listen.
advice, man. I really
Okay,
don't.
James, then have a nice day then.
Yeah.
Then I won't waste my time.
You
You
can
are
hang
one
up.
of these people.
No.
You're stuck on stupid,
No,
and
man,
you won't
you-
listen.
you are actually stuck on
bye,
stupid.
James. Bye, James. Listen to me.
You're
are
trying to make it-
argumentative.
you're trying to make
You're
a
not
logical
even.
case
Every time I'm
of
talking, you're over
logical-
talking me, James.
Thanks for calling in, Darth Dawkins. Man, you're as I said earlier, man. I really gave you
It's funny.
the time to speak there, but
Again.
it's very logically consistent, mate. To say here is the logical argument which thousands and thousands of people do not understand. They do not understand, which fucking is probably a problem as well. Like if no one's fucking getting it, if no one's getting your argument, then there is a flaw in your argument.
Yes.
You're basically saying everyone's logic is incoherent except for yours. You are illogical. You are incoherent in your logic. You are saying you make a definition for God. Then you say, then you say, well, I'm not arguing for a God, but here is the definition for God. God is, and then you proceed to ask the question, if one denies the necessity for God, while affirming a fact, then that's logically inconsistent. Your whole question is loaded on the presumption, and this is where you say, I don't get it. Your whole question is loaded on the presumption that there is, in fact, a God, when I think the reason you're doing it It's because you're trying to dodge the burden of proof.
Oh,
You're trying to dodge the burden of proof.
bingo.
And that's actually what is important here, is the burden of proof for proving God. And I think it's very logically coherent to say I affirm a fact without the necessity for God. But that's not the answer you're looking for, and you're saying that's illogical because in the denial of affirming that, we're affirming. What you would say is, in some sense, which you wouldn't phrase it this way because then you'd be stuck with the burden of proof, the existence of God.
Don't worry, there's one more.
You there, Catholic traditionalist?
You hear?
I can hear you. We've got about 10 minutes left in the show, but what would you like to talk about today?
Okay, before we carry
Yeah.
on.
So, am I live right now, or are you still?
This
speaking
guy,
to that
Catholic
other
traditionalist, he's a sort of a mini me Darth Dawkins, kind of like an apprentice. So as General Gary Milne, Darth Dawkins recruits his young acolytes, impressionable young acolytes, he indoctrinates them with the poison of his Christian dogma. And one of them calls in to Honest Atheist.
person?
Take it away.
No, we're live right now on the show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I heard you earlier in Darth Darkin's Discord room say that it's more reasonable to, based on whatever, to conclude that God does not exist. And I can show you why it's more reasonable to conclude that God does exist.
Yeah,
Would you like to?
I'll just be real honest. I can barely remember what I talked about with Darth Dawkins earlier. I just woke up. I got a message from him. He said, "Come and look at this Discord," and I jumped on and I had a look. And I ended up having a debate with him, which I was not prepared for in any manner. I hadn't had a coffee yet, etc., etc. But I did record that conversation, and it's something I need to listen back to later. But yes, present your argument for why you think it's better. You have a better reason for why you think it exists.
Before I do that, do you? I'd just like to ask you: do you believe that your position is reasonable with regards to lack of belief in God?
I don't have a lack of belief in God, because in some ways I think that's rather deceptive. It does imply, in fact, that because it's I think it's a question that
Very deceptive.
what I would say was, just to cut right to the chase, is I don't believe in God because I don't see sufficient evidence for God, and this is my personal addition to this kind of definition which is often given. I don't believe in God because I think the narrative of our universe, which is given and explained by scientific methods and reasoning, is an absolute contradiction to and this is something Darth would not let me explain, because he will never let me explain anything when he asks me a question.
Right.
It's an absolute contradiction to any narrative from theist texts. That includes the Bible, that includes the Quran, and that includes the Hindu or Buddhist or Sikh narratives, which are or definitions which are given for God and the origins of the cosmos. I think science and theist thinking is incompatible in that sense.
It is,
So there we go.
absolutely. In fact, the best answer is that God is not necessary. Creation is not necessary, as existence is infinite. There is no pre-existence. It's an infinity. Matter, energy, is infinite. So, what need for a creator? Creator of what? Everything's already there. Matter is already there. Matter already exists. What do you need a creator for? And then, to make matters even dumber, why does that creator necessarily have to have a personal relationship with you and dictate to you how to live your life somewhat against the laws of nature that you are subject to being an animal that has evolved through the ages with all of the rest of life.
Okay, but all you did was say it in a different way. You said you don't have.
Yeah, go.
Can I continue?
You can.
You
go.
said you don't have. You said you don't have. You don't have belief in God. That's just another way of saying that you lack belief in God. Or another way you could say it is you have a void of belief in God. So there's several different ways that it can be said, but it all means the same thing.
Sure. Okay.
Now
so
I'm going to go ahead.
Okay.
No, I'm going to go.
Let me just affirm what you've said. Okay. For the sake of argument, I simply lack belief in God. I will accept that.
Okay, so I'm going to show you why your position with regards to it being more reasonable to hold a lack of belief in God is actually unreasonable, that your position is actually unreasonable, and that it's more reasonable to hold belief in God. So let's say, do you have a piece of paper handy? A blank sheet of paper, hopefully?
I can get up a Word document. Is that helpful?
I don't know if you could do it on that. Maybe
Actually,
but the thing is, well, you could. Maybe you could. The thing is, if you had a blank sheet of paper and you drew a line straight down the middle, okay?
Yep.
And I just want to see if you're going to be consistent with this. I'm going to give you an example, and I'm going to ask you about it, and then I'm going to present a different example and see if you're going to remain logically consistent. So in my first example, it's this. You have a blank sheet of paper. You put a line down the middle. On the right-hand side, you have a variable that represents all human beings to whom have physically died throughout the history of mankind.
Sure.
Okay, that's on the right-hand side of the paper. On the left-hand side of the paper, you have a variable that represents human beings that are physically alive today. They have not yet died.
Okay.
Would you, if you were to take what you have on the right-hand side and apply it to the left-hand side, then would you say it's reasonable to fill in a blank as to the question of whether or not those still physically alive today will ultimately die a physical death?
I think it's reasonable to say that. Okay. Is that what you want to argue? It's reasonable to say that everyone who lives today will eventually die.
Was that proof?
Great. So there was a question mark there, okay, and you filled in that question mark with an answer based on the information you had, okay, on the right-hand side of the page.
Yeah.
Okay?
From reality and experience.
Now I'm gonna
answer that.
Yeah. So now I'm gonna give you a different scenario.
Sure.
Now you have another.
Hold on. Let me understand this. On the one side is all the people who have lived and died throughout history. On the other side are all the people who are living and have not yet died. And he said something about it is sufficient to assume that all those on the living side will one day die. Okay, and then he said, fine, let's move on to the next thing. I'm intrigued.
Another blank sheet of white blank sheet of paper, and you draw a line straight down the middle. And on the right-hand side, there's a variable that represents information that's being conveyed from one intelligent agent to another intelligent agent. Okay, and we see this demonstrated billions upon billions of times a day, not just with human beings, but other creatures as well.
Right.
Each and every day. Okay.
Yep.
And we have a historical, history whereby it shows that this has taken place throughout history. So it's many, many more times than that of physical bodies that have died throughout, the history of mankind. The example.
Well, obviously, if every physical body communicates more than once, okay, it's already more than all the physical bodies who have died throughout the history of time. So what you're saying is absolute nonsense, because every physical body communicates well, in terms of us, perhaps trillions of times, zillions of times throughout our lives, our day, whatever. So it's already starting to sound Christian stupid.
Examples I'm talking about. So now, so that's the variable on the right-hand side. Now, on the left-hand side, we have a variable that represents simply information itself. Okay. If we take what we have on the right-hand side and we apply it to answer the question on the left-hand side as to where is information itself derived from,
Right.
then would it be reasonable? Will you say that it would, to remain logically consistent, would it be reasonable if we took that information from the right side and applied it to the left side? Would it not be reasonable to come to give an answer or fill in that blank with information is being derived from an intelligent agent?
That makes no sense whatsoever.
To be honest, man, I'm a little bit lost.
A little.
I'm just finding this argument very difficult to listen to. Some of the things that are going through my mind.
What are you confused about?
I'm going to be real honest with you, and I don't mean any offense. I just find this argument very boring.
Well, okay, so you you claim it's boring. Is that because you're not able to refute what I'm presenting? Because your audience is listening to it right now.
Sure.
And they're wanting a response from you because they want to see if you're going to be logically consistent, because you answered the first example, you jumped at it, you gave an answer.
Okay.
Now you're going to run away from the second example simply because you realize that it's going to prove God's existence?
No, it's not going to prove God's existence. But
then why don't you respond and give an answer?
Let me respond to it then.
Instead of just saying,
well, let him fucking respond.
I've answered the first
Catholic
question.
traditionalist.
Okay.
Catholics everywhere.
Does that prove God exists? By answering that question.
I'm waiting for an answer to my question with regards to the second example. All you said 20 so far seconds. It's boring. You haven't answered my question.
Can you just summarize
with regards
in
to
20
what
seconds?
I put forward?
Okay, as I understand, he's talking about all the information from all the people who have ever died in the one column, and all the information from everybody who's alive in the second column, and that proves some kind of a mind connection between the dead people and those that aren't dead. That's the assertion I think that he's making, and if so, it's the dumbest one I've ever heard.
Yeah. In 20 seconds.
What are you not following? What is it you're not following?
In 20 seconds, can you just re-summarize the second argument for me, and I will give you.
Oh my goodness.
Go for it, and I promise you, I'll give you whatever response is necessary to answer that. Honestly.
Okay. Yeah. So, again, if you had on the right-hand side of the page,
right,
a variable that represents information that is conveyed from one intelligent agent to another intelligent agent, and again, we see this billions upon, maybe trillions, maybe even more than trillions times over and over again, each and every day.
Who is the intelligent agent?
And
human beings? We're talking about human beings and animals?
I've said already, it's not necessarily just human beings. It can be human beings, but we see this with other creatures as well.
Yes. So
for example, birds communicate with other birds.
Right, okay, so we've got
creatures communicate in their own way.
Right, so we've got intelligence beings on the right side of the page communicating, and then now what's on the left side of the page?
Now on the left-hand side of the page is simply information itself.
Right.
Okay. Now, the question with regards to that which is on the left-hand side of the page, with regards to information itself, where is it ultimately derived from? So you have something on the right-hand side of the page. If you apply what you have on the right-hand side of the page to the left-hand side of the page, just like we did in the other example with the physical bodies, that you used to get an answer in that situation. If we apply on the right-hand side of the page to that on the left-hand side of the page to this situation, then wouldn't you say that it's reasonable to conclude, not that you would say, oh, well, I know 100% for a fact, but at least more reasonable to conclude that it's coming, information is derived from an intelligent agent?
Okay, so I would simply say yes, that information on the left side of the page obviously would have come from the right side of the page. However, that does not mean that every person or every intelligent being or creature on the right side of the page accepts every piece of information that's on the left side of the page as being sufficient argument for whatever they're arguing. Okay, so there's yes, information on the left side of the page was likely put there, or the origins of that came from the right side of the page.
That still doesn't prove anything other than things that are living communicate.
Well, the thing is, well, thank you. I'm glad that you said that with regards to the left side of the page, that it's derived from an intelligent agent. You do realize then that would mean that the position you're holding is unreasonable, because everything that you perceive to exist is information.
I know that.
It's information. It's information you're taking in. It's data you're taking in and that you're processing. Just like with a computer, a computer has to go ahead and take in.
Whenever they go to computers,
data,
you're in trouble.
It uses its logic circuits to go ahead and process that data. So that would mean that everything that you perceive to exist is coming from an intelligent agent, by your own admission.
Everything that I perceive to exist has at some point come from an intelligent agent. And that is then placed on the left side of the page.
So the universe came from an intelligent agent.
No.
The universe isn't perceived.
You just said that everything you perceive to exist comes from an intelligent agent.
From an intelligent creature.
Right. So that creature, well, I wouldn't call God a creature since all creatures are created by God, but it's coming from an intelligent agent. You just admitted that everything you perceive to exist is derived from an intelligent agent. So everything that you perceive, hold on. So you did say that.
No,
and so everything
I did not say that.
Yes,
I said,
I'm repeating exactly what you said.
You're leaving out part of my explanation. I'm saying I accept that everything on the left side of the page has come from an intelligent creature. And an example of that may be a book about X. But that does not mean that everything on the left side is therefore accepted by that of the right side. Do you accept Islamic doctrine and that Allah is God and that Muhammad is his divine prophet? Do you accept that, yes or no?
Excuse me, that's a straw man. It has nothing
to
do with the example.
I'm just giving you an example of what I reject.
Why it's a straw man. Let me explain why it's a straw man. Because it has nothing to do with what I'm presenting.
It doesn't matter whether.
Let me explain.
I will accept.
Why.
I accept that it's a straw man, but straw man arguments can still. Just because something's fallacious doesn't mean that the fallacious argument is bad. A fallacious argument can still point to a valid conclusion.
Well, let me explain to you why it's bad. Okay, on the right-hand side, and I'll give you an example. And I'll ask you, and I'm sure your audience would agree with me. Are you from? I know you're in Australia, but you ever watch the old westerns? The shoot 'em up westerns.
Not really.
And I'm here.
I've watched the newer ones. The older ones don't really interest me.
Oh, okay. Well, they send, what is it, the telegraph, whatever that's called, through the wire, right?
Sure, yeah.
Morse code, from one town to another.
Yep.
And so that's one intelligent agent sending it to another intelligent agent.
Yes, it is.
Now, that's information. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person that is in the other town has to receive it in order for it to be sent. It's still information that's being sent. So even if the person in the other town didn't ultimately receive it, it's still information nonetheless. It's just that the person didn't receive it. For example, if you close your eyes right now, whatever data that you usually take in with your eyes, you would not be taking in because you got your eyes closed. Now, it doesn't mean that that data ceases to exist when you close your eyes. In other words, if you're sitting in a room and you close your eyes, the room doesn't cease to exist.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to go around in circles here. All I'm saying is, and I withdraw the straw man argument, although I think it's entirely valid and I could apply anything
Gary.
to that. All I'm saying is everything on the left side of that piece of paper does not necessarily mean that what's on the
Gary.
side, what is on that side is correct and
You talking
accepted
to?
by those on the right
Gary.
side. It's just not how it is.
You
That's
talking
why
to
we're
Gary?
having
You've
this
already
conversation.
admitted.
That's
Listen,
why
you've
we're having
already
this
admitted.
conversation today,
I
because
asked
we're
you a
at odds
question. No,
on what we
asked-
agree on
listen,
what should be on the left side.
I've asked James. I asked you a question with regards to the left side.
Hey, man.
If you
Hey.
use the information from
What
the
do
right
I have to
side
say?
to answer the question about where ultimately that information on the left side is derived from, you said that information itself, it's reasonable to
Good.
conclude that information itself is derived from an intelligent agent. And then I asked you, so
I clicked on
do you
thing and
realize, well, first I made a statement. I said, do you realize that everything you perceive to exist
Was-
is information? And you said yes.
well, Sydney
so
ain't saying
that
that.
means
therefore you
that,
said-
hold on, I'm not.
Okay, hold on,
Regardless.
everybody. Looks like we have. There we go. Hey, Thomas, what's going on? Hello.
Man,
We're live.
what do I do, man? What was you advised him?
Hey, Thomas, we're live.
Me
You're
to
on-
do?
You're on a live
What
stream.
decisions would you advise me to make?
I don't know about what.
How do I deal with Daddy? What do I say do? Should we
I
send
don't
him
know
to
why
a
he's on here. but I'm gonna mute him.
hospice care to die, or bring him home and not know who's gonna?
I'm afraid I'm gonna have to mute him. Well, hello. Fine. Let's get this chat. Let's get this chat room going. I've heard enough of all of the arguments for or against God. Nothing has convinced me. I am not swayed. Take the chess exam. How you doing? Hello. Hello, Moto. I don't know if anybody can even hear
Yeah,
me.
hello?
Oh, hello.
Sydney,
Yeah. Hello. I can hear you, or at least, oh, I can almost see you.
this is actually Darth Dawkins debunked. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you. Yep. I can hear you just fine.
Hello?
Can you
Can
hear
you hear
us?
me?
Yeah. I hear you. Oh, I guess nobody could hear me because I was muted. There we go. I'll bet. Hello.
I have my microphone on. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Sydney?
Yep.
This is actually Darth Dawkins debunked. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Okay. Are you? You must be hearing me, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a delay.
No problem. We'll take it into account. Okay, well, this is riveting stuff, I'm sure. Darth Dawkins debunked. The floor is yours. Well, I got to get myself in that room, don't I? Let me see if I can do that. I got to get myself into the room. Oh, there we go. So I do that, and then I do that. That should work. Aha. Good. Okay. We need to try and get this room zooming, or we're going to shut it down. Oh, you're in here twice now.
Okay, Sydney, for some reason there's a delay. I've got maybe a 10-second delay.
Yeah, you're logged in twice. And then there's feedback.
So I'm going to try to continue, even though there is a delay
Okay.
of about maybe 5 seconds.
All right.
Okay, so I just wanted to say something spoke about earlier in the conversation. He was talking about, go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, we're listening to you. Go ahead.
Okay, I just deleted the other one.
Fair enough. He jumped out. Give him a couple of seconds to come in. Anybody else want to come in? Get this room buzzing? Let's have a conversation.
Yes, 1 million.
I've already been, this has already been streaming for coming up to, in 20 minutes, it'll be 2 hours. So if we can get a room going, I'll keep it going. If not, then I'm going to stop it. Because this is boring. You know what I could do? If this meet room doesn't work out, I can start a separate stream that is a chat room like this only. I could either do it right away if there's any takers, or I could schedule it for a later time or even a date.
Were you talking to me?
No.
Okay.
We're live. We're live online here. As I've been trying to, as I'm sure you know. But I think we're going to bring it to an end because nobody's joining, and like I say, we're pretty burnt out, I guess.
Hey, but you can always believe there are people out there that are starving, that instead of feeding them, it's the least thing you can do is pray for them. And their belly will be full.
Absolutely. No problem at all.
All you got to do is get on your phone and tell them, I'm praying for you.
That's it.
I'm praying for you.
How does this praying work? Pray tell.
It works when somebody comes up with some Benjamins and greases someone's palm and they come solve the fucking problem. That's how it works.
It sounds fascinating.
Believe there are people out there, the rest of it's a bunch of goddamn that instead of liars and manipulators, it's the least thing.
Yeah. That's it.
I'm praying for you.
How does this praying work? Pray tell.
It works when somebody comes up with some Benjamins and greases someone's palm and they come solve the fucking problem. That's how it works.